Recording in progress.
Welcome, everybody. The time is now 2:30, and I hereby call the March 21st, 2023 meeting of the Area Plan Commission to order. Before we begin, I have a few announcements to make. This meeting is being held in person on the fourth floor of the council chambers of the County City Building and virtually via Zoom. Video and phone teleconferencing links and phone information are posted on our website at sjcindiana.com. Due to issues with usage of video by persons viewing meetings, the county has determined that it is appropriate to require during virtual and partially virtual meetings that members of the public viewing meetings keep their microphone and cameras turned off. The host of the meeting will turn the members of the public's microphones and cameras off. During portions of the meeting where public participation is permitted, the participating member of the public will have their microphones and cameras, if any, turned on. If a member wishes to participate in this portion of the meeting, they should indicate this by using the raise hand function in Zoom and/or by messaging the host in the chat function. When on the phone, please use *9 to use the raise hand feature to be called on, and you can use *6 to unmute. To use the raise hand feature on Zoom video, click the controls at the bottom of your screen. If you have two computer video windows open and have a phone line active with a video window open at the same time, you'll create an echo effect, making hearing you impossible. Please choose one option. Regarding public comment, I will first ask for any public comment for those sitting in the chambers, then the auxiliary seating in the building. Once those in person have provided their comment, those calling into the meeting remotely will be given the opportunity to provide public comment. Sign-in sheets for public comment have been removed to prevent everyone touching the same pen. For this reason, please clearly state your name and address. Please do not be surprised if you are asked to spell your name for the record. Your speaking time will not start until after this is done. Now that the announcements are over, Shelley, may we please have the roll call?
Mr. Devon,
Present?
Mr. Hawley,
Present.
Ms. Hannon,
Present.
Mr. Carew. Mr. Krasinski,
Present.
Mr. England,
Present.
Ms. McCombs,
Present.
Ms. Gendron,
Present.
Dr. Thacker.
Present.
Thank you, Shelley. We are a 9-member commission. We have 8 members present and 0 members attending virtually today. If any petitioner would prefer to have their petition heard with more members present, they may ask to have staff have their item tabled for future meeting when more members might be present. Currently, we have 1 seat open, vacant, so we are full attendance currently. With that being said, before we begin, for those of you that might be here or online for petition number 2, petition APC 2993-22, the petitioner has requested to table till next month's meeting. It sounds like they're holding a public meeting next week sometime. For those of you that may be interested, it might be a good time to have that prior to this meeting. So item number 2 is being tabled before the meeting. So that will not be heard today. With that, may we have reading petition number 1, please?
Rezonings, number 1, a combined public hearing on a proposed ordinance of Miller Family Development Company to zone from R Single Family District to O Office District, and seeking the following variances. From section, number 1, from section 154.152 sub C3 to allow for a rear north setback of 32 feet for a primary building where 40 feet is required. Variance number 2, from section 154.152 sub C3 to allow for a rear north setback of 5 foot for accessory building where 40 feet is required. Variance number 3, from section 154.152 sub D3 to allow for a rear yard parking interior access setback of 5 foot where 20 feet is required. Variance number 4, from section 154.152 sub D4 to allow for an access to the property within the minimum side yard abutting a residential district. Property located at 12525 Anderson Road, St. Joseph County, APC application number 3000-23.
Good afternoon. Carl Braun Grimm, Area Plan Commission staff. The petitioner is requesting to rezone a lot located at the northwest corner of Bittersweet and Anderson Road from R residential district to O office district. They plan to build a single-story office building. In 2003, the site was rezoned to OB Office Business District, which then became O Office District with the adoption of a new zoning ordinance for a use similar to what is proposed today. However, restrictive covenants on the deed that exist outside the scope of the Area Plan Commission restrict the uses of the site to single-family residence. Subsequently, the site was not developed as an office, and the site was rezoned back to R residential in 2016 to allow for a use that complies with this restriction. Today, the site has remained undeveloped as a single-family use, and our understanding is that the petitioner is aware of and is actively working on the deed restriction issue with the property. The site is located at the corner of Anderson and Bittersweet Road. To the west and south are residential subdivisions. Directly to the east is the Harris Township Fire Station, and to the north there is an industrial or manufacturing use, as well as additional commercial and industrial uses further along the west side of Bittersweet. There's the current use of the site as a vacant field. Here you can see parts of the residential use to the west and the industrial use to the north. This is the intersection of Anderson and Bittersweet Road, which gets quite busy with traffic, especially around peak times. And that's Bittersweet Road looking north. This photo was submitted by the petitioner as an example of what the proposed office building will look like. And that's the site plan. The site plan shows the 6,400 square foot office building along with the required parking and proposing connection to the Granger community sewer. The petitioner will be required to demonstrate all landscaping complies with the zoning ordinance, including type 1 open landscaping along the western property line bordering a residential use. The plan also currently shows 2 accesses onto Bittersweet and Anderson Road. However, the county engineer has indicated that they will only support 1 access, and they would prefer that it would be the one onto Bittersweet. Today is a combined hearing. As part of that, the petitioner is requesting 4 variances, allowing for the primary and accessory building in the rear yard setback, and as well as allowing for the parking area in the rear yard setback, and then allowing for access to the property in the side yard setback abutting a residential property. Staff is recommending in support of the first 3 variances while recommending denial for the 4th variance. I will group variances 1 through 3 as their criteria all have similar reasoning. Looking at state law criteria for these variances, staff finds that requested variances 1 to 3 will not be injurious to the public because the rear yard abuts a property with a more intense industrial use. The intensity of the non-residential use to the north offsets potential injury caused by the proposed encroachments within the rear setback. Similarly, the use and value of neighboring properties will not be adversely affected. The development and improvement of the site will enhance the value of the adjacent industrial use. And the required screening per the zoning ordinance will mitigate any detrimental effects to the value of the residential use to the west. Staff does feel that there is practical difficulty in developing the site as an office use because the lot was created with a residential development as the intended use, as evidenced by the restricted covenant. Based on this, the lot does not have enough length to support the increased setbacks and parking requirement of the O office district. For these reasons, staff recommends approval of variances 1 through 3, subject to the parcel being rezoned to the O office district. And then for the 4th variance, given the county engineer's comments regarding the accesses, the 4th variance is likely moot. However, staff still recommends denial for the following reasons. The approval of that variance may be injurious, allowing for access within the minimum side yard abutting a residential property, could bring increased traffic to the residential section of an intersection that already suffers from heavy traffic issues. Similarly, the use and value of neighboring properties may be negatively affected, as having another point of access so close to the access to the west may cause issues for the resident when entering or exiting their property, especially at peak traffic times. And finally, staff does not feel that practical difficulty exists on the site, as 1 access should be sufficient for safe circulation of parking and traffic on the property. Looking at the state law criteria that you should consider for the rezoning itself, staff finds this project to be consistent with a comprehensive plan. Specifically, Goal 3, Objective A, promote development or maintenance of the community and neighborhood character, given the site's status as a vacant lot. The current conditions near the site are a mix between residential to the south and the west, and then commercial and industrial to the north. This intersection between two arterial roads specifically experiences heavy traffic, and this may be a driving factor in the inability of the site to develop as a single-family residence. The most desirable use for this property would be one that limits any impact on the surrounding residential properties, while allowing for a transition to the more intense commercial and industrial uses to the north. And the office building, which already has a low intensity impact, combined with the proposed screening required by the ordinance, will likely conserve the value of the surrounding homes that are residential in character. Finally, staff feels that it will be responsible development and growth to allow for a development opportunity of a parcel that has been vacant for over 30 years. And the proposal is for a low-intensity use that minimizes the impact to the existing residential neighborhood, while also providing a transition to the industrial and commercial area to the north. And finally, we also did receive 2 letters of remonstrance right before the meeting. Those should be in your packet. Based on these factors, staff is recommending the Area Plan Commission forward this petition to the County Council with a favorable recommendation. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them now.
Thank you. Any questions by the commission?
Couple comments. I believe that property is, would be on a well system, but is it going to be connected to the Granger septic?
Yeah, the site plan shows that they're going to be on well, but they are requesting access to the Granger Community Septic, or sewer.
Thank you.
Other questions? May we have the petitioner, please?
My name is Dennis Miller. I'm head of the Miller Family Development. The office is at 806 Green Pine Court, Mishawaka, Indiana. We'd planned to develop this with 2 entrances. I'm in agreement with everything the area plan has mentioned, other than the number 4. I've been there a number of times, I just live down the street, where the traffic has been peaked at rush hour, so to speak, but it's short-lived. Being a 4-way stop, both entrances, people are going to have their feet on the brake, not the gas, especially in those times. And as far as the neighbor to the west, I've already spoken with them. They're wanting to get with me to put up a privacy fence, which he's already got part of that done, or planned anyway. As far as the restrictions on the property, it is restricted to residential only, but having developed in the area for 50 years and put together a dozen or so subdivisions with restrictions, I find that most people don't follow them anyway. And it's the only restriction on it would be from the title company if I were to pass title, which by then I'd plan to have recorded the majority of the property owner's statement to withdraw that particular parcel from the restrictions. I've already got 3 signers. I only need 2 more, and they're just waiting to get to the notaries to get their signatures notarized.
Thank you, Denny.
Are you saying there'll be, 5 offices in the building? 5 separate tenants?
6.
What's the square footage?
6464.
Thank you, Denny. Any other questions by the commission? Seeing none, I will open it to the public. Is there anyone present wishing to speak in favor of this petition? Please come forward and state your name and address.
I'm Ron Melser, MELSER, and Fire Marshal with Clay Fire, 18355 Otten Road. Obviously, we have the fire station across the street from this location. I am in favor of this project. The only problem with it, if you do restrict the second exit, that will require a turnaround within the property for a fire apparatus. So the way it sits right now, there is a drive that we can be able to get in and get out easily, but other than that, we would have to have some kind of turnaround in the parking lot. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak in favor of this petition, please come forward and state your name and address. Seeing none, is there anybody online wishing to speak in favor of this petition? Please use the raise hand feature. Seeing none, is there anyone present wishing to speak against this petition? Please come forward and state your name and address. Again, seeing none. Anyone online wishing to speak against this petition, please use the raise hand feature. Oh, sorry, we do have somebody here present.
Hi, my name is Sandy Hagan. I'm a real estate broker, and I have a company called Rosecom Properties here in the South Bend area. Born and raised in Granger, know the area quite well. I used to live on the corner of Anderson and Miller for a number of years. While I am in favor of the project, I'm here to help speak on behalf of Mimi and her husband, who own the property to the north, which used to be called patio enclosures. Most of you might know that property. The only concern that they wanted me to air is the safety factor of knowing that people are racing up and down Bittersweet Road at a pretty intense speed, and how we're going to gain ingress and egress is a very big concern of theirs. Thank you.
Please provide your address for the record.
Oh, yes, sorry. Sorry. I live at South Shore Drive, 23708 South Shore Drive, Edwardsburg, Michigan. It's a hectic time for the real estate industry right now, so forgive me for being a little busy.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak against this petition, please come forward. Seeing none. Anyone online wishing to speak against this petition, please use the raise hand feature. Again, seeing none, I will now close this to the public. Denny, do you have a chance to rebut if you like, or question, comment?
I would just say that if they are speeding up and down Bittersweet, we probably need to get law enforcement out there more often. But in addition to that, that would be all the more reason to have the exit on Anderson as well.
Thank you. Go ahead, Commission. Yep.
In addressing Ron's question in regards to the turnaround for the fire truck, is that doable?
Not without a lot more. That would pretty much take up the parking lot.
Thank you.
Have the city engineers been made aware of the issue for, that creates for the fire department?
Not to my knowledge, they have not yet.
And regardless of what we approve, it's up to the city engineer or the county engineer to approve that anyways, correct?
You took the words right out of my mouth. So you all can grant the variances, one or more, but ultimately the final accesses will need to be approved by the county engineer's office.
This is a combined public hearing, so we need to vote on both the variance, or I'm sorry, the rezoning and the variances separately. Are there any other questions? Otherwise, can we have a motion for the rezoning first?
I make a motion that we go ahead and pass 300023 favorably
For the rezoning?
for the rezoning.
We have a motion and a second to send APC 3000-23 to the county council for the rezoning with a favorable recommendation. All those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Do we want to do separately, or do we want to motion all four? Does anyone want to make a motion?
Go ahead.
Well, didn't area plan staff recommend that we do approve 1 through 3 and deny the 4th?
They did, yep.
Okay.
The fire chief said, I mean, there's discrepancy between
Yeah.
all four.
So can we approve 3 and then?
We can approve all four. Ultimately, it's up to the county engineer to approve or deny what they want.
And just for clarification, the variance requested for number 4 isn't whether or not a second drive is permitted. It's the setback for the drive to the property line to the west.
Well, I make a motion that we go ahead and pass a favorable recommendation on for the 4 variances.
To be clear, you guys approve or disapprove the variances, so.
Oh, make a motion that we approve the 4 variances.
Bob Hawley, I'll second that.
We have a motion, a second to approve the 4 variances for APC 3000-23. All those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Variance is approved. Thank you.
Okay, we're skipping 2.
Item number 2 is tabled, and so we will move to item number 3.
A proposed ordinance, 1, amending Title 15, Land Usage, Chapter 154, Planning and Zoning of the St. Joseph County Code to add a zoning overlay district applicable to the Indiana Enterprise Center Core Development Area within unincorporated St. Joseph County and amending Section 154.025 Sub B to add Indiana Enterprise Center, IEC Overlay District as an established overlay district. And number 2, amending the official zone map of St. Joseph County to apply the new Indiana Enterprise Center, IEC Overlay District to an area generally known as the Indiana Enterprise Center Core Development Area. APC application number 2998-23.
Good afternoon. This is Sean Klein, Area Plan Commission staff with offices on the 11th floor of this building. So what you're looking at now, this is a portion of the IEC overlay text amendment that was before you last month. This contains some of the lesser controversial items that we believe we have broad consensus of from the stakeholders involved, those being the permitted and prohibited uses that we want to see in the IEC, the western buffer yard and screening, landscape standards related to flagship developments. Previously, those were called the landmark developments. There were some concerns from the Historic Preservation Commission staff that might lead to some confusion with their locally historically protected landmarks, as they call them legally. So we opted for another name, flagship. We weren't really married to landmark necessarily anyway. And then additionally, this would have regulations requiring native landscaping. So we wanted to go ahead and get these standards in on the ground now to guide development, especially considering that when a lot of these IEC core development parcels that have been rezoned went through the rezonings, it was mainly concerns related to uses that were in the forefront of the public's mind. So at the very least, we want to get these use restrictions in place so the development is elevated beyond what the I district would currently allow if we weren't to take action today. In the meantime, we're going to continue to do some research on the more controversial items where we don't have the full buy-in, those being especially building form and building articulation, as you saw last month. So this This text amendment would fulfill part of the obligations under the resolutions that were passed by the county commissioners, the redevelopment commission, Olive Township, and the town of New Carlisle related to the IEC core development area, those being identifying the appropriate uses. We will still have to return back with another text amendment to apply to the overlay for everything else. The obligations related to green space, development practices, signage, integration of trails, and sustainability features. So we will return with that once we do some more research and take things back to the working group for their input and support. So as I said, one of the key parts of this portion of the IEC overlay are the use permissions and restrictions. This prohibits expressly uses of slaughterhouse, sewage treatment plant, mining, junkyard, metal scrap shredders, landfills, coal and nuclear power plants, and a series of defined heavy industrial uses. It also sets up accessory uses and special uses. It's the same in the version you've previously seen. For the landscaping, this will adopt the regulations related to native species. For 50% of the trees and any flowering plants that are provided on site, those will need to be native species to Indiana or cultivators. And if a site uses turf grass, they'll need to provide 5% of that area in native grasses or wildflowers as well. Additionally, this will provide the western boundary screening. These are for developments along the western edge of the core development area in the unincorporated county, wherein the developer will have to provide 1 tree per 35 feet of that property line. Additionally, the last part of this, it does incorporate the landscaping for these flagship parcels for the foundation landscaping and for the parking area landscaping. These standards are in excess of what would currently be required under the zoning ordinance in terms of the number of plants that are needed. For parking, they'll need to have 1 tree per 10 spaces as opposed to 1 per 30 under the existing ordinance. And for the foundation, it's 1 tree per 50 plus 1 shrub per 20. Currently, they could get by with just the 1 tree per 50 or 10 shrubs per 50 feet. And that's about everything with where we're at now. Staff recommends that this text amendment and applying it to the IEC core development area of the unincorporated county be sent to the county council with a favorable recommendation. As I said, we need to continue to do our research regarding the agriculture or the architectural standards, take those back to the working group, and then produce a version that everyone's satisfied with to bring back to you. So we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. And it is staff, right? So that was the...
Right, we're the petitioner.
Petitioner, correct. So any questions?
Yeah, I do. Just, Sean, what does that process look like then for round 2 if this gets passed now and then for the building form and articulation? Would that be then brought forward like this and then we vote on it at that point?
Yeah, it would be exactly like this. So this will set up the district, but then we'll do another text amendment that will set up all the new and development standards from there.
With that, I will open this up. Is there anyone present wishing to speak in favor of this petition? Please come forward and state your name and address.
Good afternoon, Bill Shaley, Executive Director of Economic Development for St. Joseph County, part of Department of Infrastructure Planning and Growth with offices on the 7th and 11th floor. Before you today in support of this ordinance, and I want to be clear, this is part 1 of what will be a 2-part ordinance. We're excited that we are at a point with part 1. We've spent a lot of time since the last meeting working through the ordinance that was before you last month. It was going to be a Herculean task to work through small, medium, large, and flagship building requirements. We thought it was important based on projects moving forward to get the flagship piece out of the way, get that approved first, and then we'll come back and deal with small, medium, and large. We think there's a lot of things in this ordinance that really are good. The uses, general consensus on the uses, the western boundary, landscaping, and the definitions at the back of the ordinance. We feel this is a good first step, but again, it is only the first step in what will be a two-part process. So any questions, we would be happy to answer, but fully in support of this.
Thank you, Bill. Anybody else wishing to speak in favor of this, please come forward and state your name and address.
Good afternoon, Allison Herzig, Director of Economic Development at South Bend Regional Chamber. Jeff is unable to attend today. He's in DC, so I'm here on his behalf. Last time we were here, the Chamber had voiced some concerns, and so we appreciate the opportunity to work with the Area Planning Commission and the area planners to develop phase one of the overlay. We've worked through it. We've spoken to the businesses out in the IEC and have gotten their feedback as well. And so that has helped to get us to the point that we're at, and we look forward to continue to work with the area planners to come up with phase two. And so at this time, we would also say that a favorable recommendation. I have a letter from Jeff that I will give you as well that kind of outlines some of that. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Allison. Anybody else present wishing to speak in favor of this petition, please come forward.
Hello, Marcy Kaufman, 106 Bray Street, New Carlisle, Indiana. I'm speaking today on behalf of the town of New Carlisle as the town council president. And while we understand why the IEC overlay district is being adopted in a modified format today, it is problematic that the IEC overlay as a whole, finished, complete document is not up on the agenda today at the same time. So I would like to urge all those involved to please follow through with completing and implementing the IEC overlay with minimal alterations, thus preserving the original intent, spirit, and integrity of the original IEC overlay document. Thank you.
Anybody else present wishing to speak in favor?
Good day. Deborah Durrell, 21677 Naughton Road, South Bend. Thank you all for your work today. I am so happy to be here and support this portion of the IEC overlay, as we have had the opportunity to move forward with about 6 years of priority effort to ensure a safe and healthy place to live and work. Thank you to all who are participating, especially Abby, Sean, and Bill. Specifically, I wish to be clear to support and encourage more of the functional purposes of screening native plantings, pollinator habitats, noise reduction, night sky, buffers, to not only improve the aesthetic appearance and protect the communities, but also to protect our natural areas such as woodland and wetland habitats for food, shelter, and territory. To this point, much has been said about the area being planned for industry since even before the 1980s, an era which has involved a variety of successful and unsuccessful developments. Our update on regional brownfields has been delayed due to a heavy workload, but just to name a couple of well-known problem areas, the Ball Band and Flex Steel sites have conceivably polluted our waters well into the 90s, and for which we are still working to balance. In the 1970s and 80s, my parents took our family on a road trip across the country without a thought for seatbelt safety. They were inconvenient, thought as an overkill, and restricting. Perhaps the lack of cell phone use, heavy traffic and congestion, and generally slower speeds made us feel safer. However, most of us wear seat belts now and use child seats because the science has changed our understanding of risk and road safety. These are now laws to preserve the lives of not only drivers, but also others on the road. This is the case for development as well, and industry affects the communities and natural areas even in the last decade. Again, protecting our natural areas is protecting the property owners and community. The IEC overlay is suited to our changing challenges, and passing this bill will help us move forward to meet many goals responsibly for the remaining values we need to address. Thank you.
My name is Charlotte Wolf, 21439 Osborne Road, Lakeville. And I would like to echo the sentiments of Mrs. Kaufman, saying that I'm very much in support of this overlay, but very discouraged that this has been split up into two parts. It did not need to be. The overlay was reviewed at least 3 times with all parties who could make a comment invited and available to comment. At the last minute, a few individuals suggest that they were left out of the process. Very upsetting to those of us who've been following this issue very closely and also communicating to our neighbors, friends, and your constituents about this process. The other thing that I would like to echo is what Mrs. Doral said, and that is that we're not just looking at this overlay as quality of life or whatever. This is a very, very pivotal moment in our globe's history. Just yesterday, the International Climate Change Panel came out with their latest report, which they said is going to be, quote, the final warning. Climate change is upon us, and if we do not act in enacting the most rigorous environmental standards that are possible for our community, we will not be leaders, for one thing, and I believe that St. Joseph County could be a leader in Indiana, and I believe that Indiana could be a leader in our nation. Why would we drag our feet on something as simple as this excellent piece of legislation, or ordinance, whatever you call it, will protect the land, help people retain their quality of life, help the farmland retain its values, and at the same time provide jobs. I am in total agreement with having a development area. I do not like the location of this particular development area and have been consistently opposed because of the high water table. There is a lot of opportunity for water contamination. That is why this is so necessary, to restrict the uses because of the high water table and the potential for contamination. I urge this body to adopt this portion of the overlay and to quickly adopt the other portion without any more shimmying of that, because it's got a lot of good stuff in it. We need trees, we need landscaping to soak up carbon. We need more jobs that are high, solar jobs, whatever, those kind of jobs we need. We don't really need them in this space, but apparently that's what's been voted. I would love to have them in a place closer to South Bend, closer to jobs and people, but this being as it is, at least adopt this and quickly adopt the second portion. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Dan Caruso, 305 New Carlisle, 305 Compton, New Carlisle. Ditto, just exactly what Charlotte said are the concerns. I support this wholeheartedly. I wish it was going through completely as it was originally submitted. And I question whether the chamber is willing to let things lay as they are through statements from the president of the chamber, where he says he's concerned the overlay goes above and beyond what should be considered reasonable for an industrial development area. We believe the overlay puts an undue burden on both existing businesses in this area that might consider growing and on potential future investors eyeing this region. I live there. That's my home. If you're going to come into my home and you're going to put something on there, number one, I got to have a voice in it, and there is nothing that is too cautious. To say that, to me, that is reckless to say we think this restricts the businesses, that it will discourage some of them from coming into the area. I'm sorry, if you don't like the fact that our drinking water comes from right where you're going to be putting your stuff on there with a very shallow or non-existent clay layer to protect it, you need to go somewhere else. Go to a desert somewhere, but do not get to where you're going to affect what is essentially liquid gold with the state of water in this world nowadays. Another statement which I disagree with the chamber on, which I can't believe, it should not receive any further consideration. Under the bullet points, it talks about, under example of common open space, the reference for facilities used for active recreational purposes, such as pools, playgrounds, tennis courts, jogging trails, ball fields, and clubhouses, clearly demonstrates this ordinance was intended for a zoning district other than industrial. Yeah, residential. I live there. I take my dogs walking there. I have to have some consideration that I'm still going to use that no matter what businesses come in there. I'm there first. You're coming in, you're bringing industry into residential. You have to make industry fit in with residential, and they've got to live by the rules. And like Charlotte, I am a little disappointed that we can't pass this whole thing as it was originally submitted. I've got a few things that I don't like about it, but the protections that the overlay gives is we shouldn't pass that up, and I urge you to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Anybody else wishing to speak in favor of this petition, please come forward and state your name and address.
My name is Jennifer Betts. I live at 730 Cottage Grove Avenue, South Bend. I would also, I won't say too much. Everyone has spoken eloquently before me. I am in favor of the overlay. I also agree. I think Ms. Kaufman said intent, spirit, and integrity, and I thought those were great words in terms of getting the entire overlay passed as it was originally proposed. I was devastated when this was zoned industrial in September of 2020. If any of you were there, room was packed. We were out there, and we've been working on this for 6 years. And I think it actually is amazing that today, Mr. Shaliel and myself are actually speaking on the same side. I mean, I think that really shows what a process this has been, how much this really is a compromise to say, we understand that the county wants business, and this is people's home, this is our earth, these are our communities. We want it to go above and beyond. We want businesses that care about our community to be the ones that come here. So yes, please pass this. I'm thrilled about the native plantings. I do worry about the water table, and I hope that can be discussed more. But I do hope that the entire overlay district, maybe just the only other thing I'll say, it's hard for me to come here on a work day at 2:30. But the reason that I'm here is because I heard what happened last month, and I was appalled that we might go back from all of this progress that we had made to nothing. So I thought it was really important that I come today. But I really appreciate all the work. I appreciate so much the work here of the planners. They've been incredible. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Betts.
Bob Humbarger, 29987 Hurd Road, Olive Township, for the past 50 years. Last month, I sent a brief history of the IEC area from the 1980s to 2000 as I experienced it. And that letter, supposedly in your packet, was intended to make sure that the viewpoints, viewpoints were available to the newer members of this board. A lot of you know more about it than I do, but what does all this have to do with the IEC overlay? Well, it's the promises that are kept and not kept. And over the years, there were a lot of promises that are in that letter in your packet that were made and not kept. And this seems to be just one more thing when it gets to the point to where promises are made and plans are made, and the APC staff did an excellent job of creating this document, but it's not kept. And I'm very concerned about the environment, and the environmental aspects are more important than what the residents out there feel that they want to walk through, and that includes the water. I won't go into any more of that because of interest in brevity and avoiding redundancy. And so those who want to growth over environment are already attacking this document and weakening it. And so even though this document has a lot of shortcomings, it's very important to get it passed. And that includes the entire thing, not just this piece of it. And because of the history that has been proven about the county's verbal commitments, they just can't be counted on, and this is another example. So yes, I like to see you pass this ordinance, but it's the part that's coming is just is important also. Thank you.
I'm Victor Myers. I reside at 336 West Navarre, South Bend. I don't have a lot to say, except I'm totally supportive of the overlay as it was originally proposed. It's a little difficult to comment exactly on the second portion without seeing what it is that is an issue. What is difficult about it? If it has to do with water, I can't see a need for much compromise. We're talking about safety, and once contaminated, as we're finding out in Palestine, Ohio, you might have to cart a lot of dirt away before you, once toxins get into the water table. So keep that in mind, the expense of not having safeguards. It's not just the expense, and if it's building facade, aesthetics, those are some slightly different issues. I guess those are issues that can be debated and compromised on. But when it comes to water quality and safety, environmental issues, well, I'd like to see what is so difficult about, what are the objections to the ordinance as proposed. So I look forward to transparency and for a chance for the general public to see what is discussed before the next meeting. Thank you.
Hello, this is Judith Robleski. I live at 515 South Mead in South Bend, Indiana. I've been involved with this IEC plan for 6 years. And I thought we had a good compromise, all settled. And then the chamber comes up with more ideas to change things. And I think we've already worked on this and spent a lot of time, and I don't think we need to do any more. So just please vote on the original overlay. Thank you.
Is there anybody else present wishing to speak in favor of this petition? Seeing none, is there anybody online wishing to speak in favor of this petition? Please use the raise hand feature.
Go ahead, Steve F.
Yes, hi. Thank you for taking comment. My name is Steve Francis. I live at 54174 Juday Lake Drive, South Bend, up in Clay Township. I want to, by way of introduction, I was state chair of the largest conservation organization in the United States, Indiana State Chair, for 10 years. Have a graduate degree from Notre Dame in development and public policy. I wanted to say, I missed last meeting. I would have spoken in favor of it, but I was out of the country and I was really quite appalled that, what happened. I listened to the recording because just to recap, this overlay was introduced first in August of last year. It was also discussed, I know for a fact, because I'm on the economic development group for the county plan, the new county plan. It was discussed in that meeting, and there were representatives from the chamber in that meeting where we discussed the overlay. And then, of course, you voted to move it forward in November after comment, which I commented on. I had some concerns then. And then it went to the council and was withdrawn so that it could be tweaked further by the staff of the Area Plan Commission in December. So I do take issue that this wasn't available for 5 or 6 months for all to see, for all to comment on. And I do feel like it should have gone forward as it was, and then perhaps changed in the future if someone didn't like it. I do feel I want to commend the staff, particularly of the Area Plan Commission, for being open to changes, for listening to comments very intently, for giving us time to work out a compromise, what I would call really is common ground between those who are dead set against an industrial center in this area, of which I was one, yet recognizing we need to have some standards that safeguard water protection, air protection, land protection, and design standards. And I think we've worked out a really good compromise. The original commitments were not satisfactory. They were put in place without public comment at a county council meeting on second reading. And we needed to have some more significant permissions and opportunities for public input on certain projects. So I don't, this is not perfect by any means, but it provides clarity to all involved, to businesses that might want to move in. It provides safeguards for water and air and land in the area. I think that we need to do more than just monitor and test. We need to protect those very important resources as we move forward. So I very strongly support this. I urge you to support this and to move forward promptly with the design parameters and the other issues that are outstanding, perhaps at the next meeting, so that we can get this all in place before we have candidates for locating in this area, so that they know and we're fair to businesses, that they know what we expect as a community for them to be good stewards of the environment and of the area. So thank you very much for taking comment, and I appreciate in advance your positive vote moving forward, and look forward to working and seeing the rest of it in place in the coming months. Thank you.
Looks like we have another hand up.
Go ahead, Mary.
Hello, Mary Countryman, 52959 Timothy Road, New Carlisle. While I do agree and excuse me, support the IEC overlay as written so far, I agree for the record. Again, I object to the water being put at risk. Most of us have learned from the past, no matter how safe we try to be, no matter how much we plan for the worst, things happen. So many things in the past were once deemed safe and are now unsafe. Look at the lead paint problem. So many are still paying for this. There are too many areas where the water table is very high. After reading so many different studies, this shows up in several of them, or all of them actually. And as the original one that I remember reading, it states the water is highly susceptible to contamination. Excuse me. I feel as if New Carlisle is being treated like Cinderella and acting as if our area doesn't deserve the best looking and, more importantly, the safest conditions. Would any of you be okay if I came into your house with dirty, muddy, manured shoes, smoking a cigar, dropping waste in your home? I don't think so. That's kind of what it feels like when it was said that the standards are too high. I feel like they should be extra high because the standards should be set. If somebody is not worthy of, if they don't think it's important to look nice, then why would I even think they're going to bother taking care of the environment around their building? Qualifications to move here may be considered too strict, but if you read more into the cited articles by Jeff Ray, there's more to the story. Indiana isn't number 1 and number 2 in many rankings, and I feel we should have requirements such as the overlay, because we have so much at risk, our water, our land. And every day in the media, there are drought stories. Now it's turning into lawsuits for water. We need to protect our water. We shouldn't lower any standards, and especially when it comes to our water and our land. Indiana ranks number 48 for the workforce. That was in one of the articles that when Jeff was quoting, we're number 1 and number 2 in this and in that and in this and that. I went on to read the articles, and Indiana didn't even make the top 10 for several of those other sites. When he talked about CNBC and Forbes and business facilities, when he spoke of those different facilities, they didn't even rank in the top 10 for so many of those other studies. And while it's nice to brag on Indiana, I don't think he should be using the excuse of that we're raising the bar too high for the standards for what's here. Because like I said, it's a workforce is a lot of the problem why businesses don't want to move here. And also in the Tribune, I read the article when the chamber hosted the speaker, Pete Yonkman. I would really love to see the South Bend Regional Chamber focus more on what Pete Yonkman spoke about doing. He talked about working with others in the community and helping solving housing shortages and bringing employment to the poorest neighborhoods, bringing a grocery store to a neighborhood that needs one. They looked into solving issues such as drugs, housing, education, healthcare. They did all these things. They helped people get their high school diplomas. So they had workers. And there are plenty of jobs in our area already. And I would really think this would be great if the chamber would work with, say, the United Way or other forces in Indiana that could help the people that are already here and help them get their housing and their diplomas and help them get jobs. Because when Indiana is ranking number 48 in the workforce, that's probably the reason why businesses don't want to come here. It's not because we want your business to look nice and be nice in our neighborhood. Thank you.
Anybody else online wishing to speak in favor of this petition, please use the raise hand feature. Otherwise, is there anybody in present wishing to speak against this petition? Please come forward and state your name and address. Seeing none. Anybody online wishing to speak against this petition, please come forward or use the raise hand feature. Again, seeing none. Any last comment by the commission?
Yeah, actually, Adam, I have a question for Mr. Shalil. He stated when he was up there that this was the flagship being approved today. That's exclusive of the design standards. All the design standards on portion 2 would also apply to those flagship. Is that correct?
I'm going to let Abby answer that one.
That is correct. All of the architectural standards will be contained in the second phase of this.
I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you, Mr. Shalil. I think I'm in a unique position, so I'm going to look to you to make sure I'm not speaking out of turn because I am in town, a New Carlisle resident, but also on the board. So I don't want to speak, I guess, out of the context, which I should today. In the New Carlisle, it's a document, it's a resolution 20-09-01-02 titled, "The Resolution of Town of New Carlisle Town Council Regarding the Indiana Enterprise Center." So this was a document approved by all parties, in my understanding. Section 5 notes native plantings, dark sky, all the things mentioned before. It also states jogging paths, different things that I feel like were really shot down with the design concerns that were brought forth by the chamber. And in my understanding, this was an agreement made prior with the town that these are things we want to set ourselves apart with. So I just hope that those are kept in consideration during the second phase of the design. And it's not even just how it looks. There are people that are going to be working in these buildings. I think we have a really unique, beautiful area out there with a lot of parks. And I live in town and people are always walking. It's a very active place. So for those to be cut short because maybe a business doesn't want to come in, I would think that that would be enticing for those businesses to offer that to their employees. Nobody wants to sit in a cubicle with no windows all day. And I hope that that is pushed through. I don't think we're trying to be a Carmel, Indiana. I don't really like Carmel. I don't think it's an attractive place. I think what we're trying to do is to keep the spirit of the town. And the people that are going to be coming there are going to probably be a part of our community and give them a commensurate place to live and extend our community to them. So, thank you.
Thank you, Molly. I would like to say, I have seen this over the years as well, as many of you, the back and forth, and I would like to say I know how much work staff has put in Bill over the years, and I appreciate from the commission, I've seen everything and everything we don't see, so I do appreciate that. So with that, do we have a motion for APC 2998-23?
I'll make a motion to pass this portion, 2998-23.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to send APC 2998-23 to the county council with a favorable recommendation. All those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. For petition number 4, last month we did hear a public hearing, but since there has been so many revisions that was hinged on petition number 3, we are going to go ahead and have our presentation as well. So can we have the petition number 4, please?
A proposed ordinance of Kenneth E. and Elaine A. Sebasti Sr. to modify written commitments, instrument number 2020-39678, concerning the rezoning of property in St. Joseph County, ordinance number 66-20, generally located north of State Road 2, east of Willow Road, north and south of Early Road, west of Spruce Road, together with a 70 plus or minus acre parcel at the northwest corner of Early Road and Walnut Road, including the following parcels: 71-06-122-100-000-017, and all other parcel numbers noted on the agenda. APC application number 2985-22.
All right. Abby Wiles, APC Director. Before you in this petition is a modification of written commitments that were included by the County Council for rezoning approved in 2020. This is for property owned by the Sebastis. The written commitments included kind of two parts. One was use restrictions that prohibited a number of what we would call heavy industrial uses. The use restrictions have been addressed in the IEC overlay that you just provided a favorable recommendation for. So staff, or the petitioner, is requesting that the use restrictions be terminated, because rather than having multiple sets of use restrictions tied to individual properties, it's cleaner to just have it as use restrictions for the entirety of the IEC overlay or the core development area. The second part is preservation of the wetland area. I'll read the language exactly. Preservation of 2 identified forested wetlands. The 2 identified forested wetlands will remain agricultural. The petitioner is requesting that these be modified. In your packets, and for those following along online, the packet included the original written commitment and the corrected version, and it also includes what is proposed by the petitioner to replace the existing commitments. It's shown in red line, I believe, page 95. And rather than having the language read preservation of legally delineated wetland, to the extent that it contains a legally delineated wetland, the wetland should remain undeveloped. The area in question really today is what we refer to in the office as the mitten, and you can see it on the site plan. It's the red area along State Road 2. Following the rezoning in 2020, the Redevelopment Commission retained Stantec, previously Cardno, to do a field test that was then reviewed by the Army Corps of Engineers. And it was determined that it didn't meet the parameters to be a legally delineated wetland by the Army Corps of Engineers. The language change is requested by the petitioner to allow the site not to be restricted to be agricultural, but to allow it to remain undeveloped. Another, I would say, concession for allowing the language change is the green area shown at the northwest corner of the site. The language stated that it's the 2 forested, identified wetlands. The area to the northwest, is a legally delineated wetland in blue. That isn't being disputed. It's the area along State Road 2. So to allow the language change in the written commitment, the Redevelopment Commission is dedicating like acreage in the green area as kind of a set aside, so to speak. So what's being proposed here, is again, the removal of the use restrictions and the alteration of the language in the second written commitment. Staff is recommending, it has provided a favorable recommendation, and happy to answer any questions that you all have. If you have specific questions related to the jurisdictional determination by the Army Corps of Engineers, I'd ask you to direct those to the petitioner.
Thank you, Abby. Any questions? Do we have a staff petitioner, or do we have a
No, staff is not the petitioner.
petitioner, please?
Good afternoon, Bill Shalio, Executive Director of Economic Development, Department of Infrastructure Planning and Growth, offices on 7th and 11th floor. Before you today is this modification of the written commitments. I think as Ms. Wiles has described, two parts. First is the use section, and again, with the overlay, the uses are taken care of, so we don't want conflicting information in two different places. All the uses here are also defined in the overlay, so we believe that sufficiently takes care of Section A. The second section, and I was going to say on the map, if we could leave the
Sorry,
map
Bill.
up. No, that's okay. So earlier this year, or earlier last year, the Redevelopment Commission purchased a 70-plus acre piece of property on the northwest corner of Walnut and Early Road. Part of the reason that we purchased that property was because we saw ultimately there could be an opportunity to extend rail into the IEC, and this would be one of the properties that we would need for rail. But we also understood that there was the wetland, the area that has wetland conditions, and it's adjacent to property we own. It's already in forested, Indiana certified forest, just to the north of there, land that the Redevelopment Commission owns there. So as Abby and staff and Redevelopment Commission worked out these written commitment modifications, the ability to replace the acreage in the mitten in the area in green, including the area in blue also, creating a nearly 50-plus acre wetland-like area really is, we believe, a big win for sustainability and for the buffering and the corridor in that area. We haven't haven't gone through an official determination to determine that it's a wetland, but it has many of the wetland characteristics. We believe that this is land that we're going to either set aside either with a group, a conservation group like Shirley Hines Land Trust, or we'll keep it and put restrictions on it. We're still working through the details on how that will work, but we believe that this is a good compromise and a good benefit to the area and a good buffer for the uses on the east and as a buffer to the town. So if there's any questions, we'd be happy to answer them. We do appreciate your consideration of this modification.
Thank you, Mr. Shalio. Is there any, we're going to go ahead and open this up to the public for comment. Is there anybody present wishing to speak in favor of this petition? Please come forward and state your name and address.
Good day again, Deborah Durrell, 21677 Otten Road, South Bend. Again, this is a very positive bill, and the ordinance mitigating the mitten and transferring the land and all of the relative concerns closer to the wetland area. I do want to tinge my support with the caveat that I have been told by two people involved with this that more of the water concerns are related to the portion that, the part number 2, that we are still looking at, the drainage and all of that kind of thing. And I'd like to relate particularly why I think this is something that we have to keep in mind. This is a good faith effort to support this going forward while the Part 2 is still being negotiated. Years ago, when Edison Lakes was created, and I don't know if that's considered a successful development, but it was a wooded wetland area, and I don't know if it was certified wetland or whatever, but when Edison Lakes was created, all of the wildlife and waterfowl
moved out of that area. It was a huge migratory pattern for all of the waterfowl in that area, and they all moved into the surrounding neighborhoods and roads. And that caused a typical outcry of residents because of the goose poop and everything else, and all the fountains getting clogged up, and collisions on the road, causing a further labeling of wildlife as pests. So again, I think it's very positive that we're moving the woodland area away from State Road 2, north, closer to the wetland, where all of these wildlife species can be safer, but also just because I think it's a sign that we're actually trying to share this planet. Thank you.
Anybody else present wishing to speak in favor of this petition, please come forward. Seeing none. Anybody online wishing to speak in favor of this petition, please use the raise hand feature. Seeing none. Anybody present wishing to speak against this petition, please come forward and state your name and address. Again, seeing none. Anybody online wishing to speak against this petition, please use the raise hand feature. Seeing none, I will now close this to the public. Any last comments or questions? Or otherwise, may we have a motion?
I make a motion that we go ahead and give a favorable recommendation and pass 2985-22.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion and a second to send APC 2985-22 to the county council with a favorable recommendation. All those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Same thing for number 5. We did have a public hearing last month, but we are going to go ahead and open this since we did have changes to item number 3. So can we have reading number 5, please?
A proposed ordinance of St. Joseph County Redevelopment Commission, Department of Infrastructure Planning and Growth, to terminate written commitments, instrument number 2021-32496, concerning the rezoning of property, ordinance number 75-21, located in St. Joseph County at the northeast corner of State Road 2 Highway and Willow Road, including the following parcels: 71-06-12-100, -002.000-017, and all other parcels noted on the agenda, APC application number 2986-22.
Abby Wiles, APC Director, again. This is the second petition for termination or modification of written commitments. It is largely similar as the prior petition. I'll walk through what it is now and then how it's being handled. So the use restrictions are very similar to what was in the prior petition, and the use restrictions, again, are being covered through the overlay district. There was a commitment that was B, preservation of legally delineated wetland. To the extent that the property contains a legally delineated wetland, it shall not be used for any industrial use. In this case, there are no legally delineated wetlands on the site. The county council had heard a rezoning that had the language, the one that we just, that you just sent to, with a favorable recommendation to modify, and they assigned similar language here. The petitioner stated that it clouds title to have this requirement on as a written commitment when there are no wetlands, so they're proposing that it be terminated. C included that the property will include an 80-foot wide type 2 landscape buffer as measured from the center line of the road. In areas the road hasn't been the right-of-way hasn't been dedicated. What the western buffer boundary covers in the IEC overlay is a 50-foot landscape buffer measured from the property line versus an 80-foot landscape buffer as measured from the center line. We effectively end up with 10 feet, right, Sean? When we did the math, because 80 feet from the center line, 40 feet each way. Now we're going 50 feet from the property line, which gives us additional 10 feet of landscape, or of green area. And then the landscaping, as outlined in the overlay, will be one tree for every 35 feet of lot line, where it is currently one tree for every 40 feet in the current zoning ordinance. So the use restrictions get terminated. The wetland language gets terminated because there are no wetlands on the site. And then the type 2 gets terminated and addressed through the overlay district. Staff recommends approval of the termination of written commitments. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Abby. Petitioner, please.
Good afternoon, Bill Shalio, Economic Development. So uses, we've talked about, the wetlands we've talked about. One of the things I would like to note, so as you see in the map, there's a rectangle over the 3 properties in the southwest corner of IEC Site 1. That rectangle represents all of the area that would have had landscaping if this went forward. Under the new written commitments, or not the new written commitment, the new overlay, we would be required to landscape the entire western side, the western area as part of this buffer. So instead of a 180-foot landscape buffer that would only be 10 feet wide, or 40 feet wide, we're actually going to have 50 feet that's over 2,500 feet wide by having to go all the way up the entire west side of the area into that wetland area we were just talking about under the last petition. So we believe that the overlay takes care of all of the requirements that these written commitments had. We'd ask for a termination in total of this written commitment. If there's any questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Bill. We'll now open this to the public. Is there anybody present wishing to speak in favor of this petition? Please come forward and state your name and address.
Charlotte Wolf, 21439 Osborne Road, Lakeville. I guess I would like to speak in favor of it with the caveat that right now we're only seeing a portion of this supposed overlay. So hopefully the second part will include all this and not be tweaked away. So that's my only concern with this, is that we're giving away these written commitments before the overlay is completely approved. Thank you.
Anybody else wishing to speak in favor of this petition, please come forward and state your name and address. Seeing none, anybody online wishing to speak in favor of this petition, please use the raise hand feature. Seeing none, anybody present wishing to speak against this petition, please come forward and state your name and address. Again, seeing none, anybody online wishing to speak against this petition, please use the raise hand feature. Again, seeing none, I will now close this to the public. Any last comments or questions? Otherwise, may we have a motion, please?
I motion that we send APC 2986-22 with a favorable recommendation to the county council.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to send APC 2986-22 to the county council with a favorable recommendation. All those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Thank you, everybody. That is all for the items requiring a public hearing. We do have a few things not requiring public hearing. We have findings of facts we have to approve on.
And just for a little background, you all have findings of, Molly and Bob know because they're on ABCA, but when you have combined hearings that include variances, you will approve findings of fact at the next meeting. So this is for the variances that were included with the last combined hearing.
Need a motion to approve the findings of the facts.
I make a motion, we approve the findings of the facts.
Second.
Motion to approve findings of the facts from February 21st, 2023 meeting. All those in favor, state by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Abby, Executive Director's
All
report,
right.
please.
So what I gave you this month is not the monthly report that I typically give you, but I gave you the full annual report for 2022 and the proposed work plan for 2023. Since it's several pages long, just review at your leisure and feel free to contact me if you have any questions.
Do you want to bring up the,
Oh, yes. Adam has asked about doing training. We did training with our ABZA last month? Yes, February. And we'd like to do that with you all next month. We just wanted to gauge availability for the April meeting before we go ahead and schedule that.
They're gonna be at 3:30 instead of 2:30?
It's looking like now that we have the commitments and part one of the overlay that we've addressed, we have one rezoning that has been tabled, and then we've had 2 new filings. Is that correct, folks?
Yes.
Yep. Okay, so we'll have 3 petitions. We should be able to, I think, get in and out before the commissioners' meeting at 6 PM.
so if that's the case, the meeting would be 3:30, but having the meeting beforehand, correct, or no?
What we talked about last month is potentially starting an hour earlier, doing the training prior to the meeting. So start at 2:30 like we did today, have training from 2:30 to 3:30, and then have our regular meeting at 3:30. And if that works for everyone, we'll get it set and we'll plan for it.
So does anybody have an issue with that for next month's meeting?
I'll be here.
Great.
Thank you, everybody. And again, that's for what Abby said, for those of you that there's, every year, it seems like we seem to have at least one person changes on the commission, so it's more of a reminder why we're here, what we do, what we're comprised of, and all that good stuff. So hopefully it's not too long and painful, so thank you, Abby. Anything else on Executive Director's report? Otherwise, we have some minutes to approve. Anybody have any comments or questions on minutes? Otherwise, do we have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion that the minutes be approved.
Got a motion, a second to approve minutes from February 21st, 2023 meeting. All those in favor, state by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Do we have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Got a motion, a second to adjourn. All those in favor, state by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed. Thank you, everybody. We could just stick around now and do the